Krishna is continuing to speak on how the science of work is actually seen through the eyes of a devotee. This is a very practical chapter because all of us will have to perform some activity at all points of our life. Nobody can escape that. And we don't live in a vacuum, which means we will always have to be active. Bhagavad Gita is very clear that there is no such thing as a person who cannot be still. Everybody has to move. And there's no such thing as inaction. Even while we are seated, you will find that we are constantly on the move. Even if bodily we may look very, very still, we cannot stop and check the mind because the mind keeps moving always. So activity is part and parcel of the fact that we have this body, and therefore we cannot escape it. The most important thing we can do right now is to find out how we can actually turn this activity of ours into spiritual and Krishna consciousness. That is the real key. And you find here that Krishna makes it very clear. He starts by saying the work of a man. In other words, he is talking about our work. He says a man who is not attached to the modes of material nature. So the first qualification to coming out of the effects of the work is not to become attached to the material modes. The second thing he says is, we can come out of the effects of the material modes of nature when we are at the same time situated in transcendental knowledge. This is a very important point. You find that transcendental knowledge is the only way to come out of the modes of material nature. No amount of material knowledge will ever help us come out of the modes, because the modes by nature are material. How can you use material knowledge to come out of material modes? It just isn't even commonsensical. And Krishna says, if you have these two with you, then such a man is considered to be transcendental. That's why they use the word praviliyate, merges entirely. Merges means that person actually becomes very transcendental. So this point is very important for us to understand. Krishna makes it a point here to state that in the proper mood of Krishna consciousness, we can actually become transcendental to the effects of the work. Otherwise, very often you find work is always disturbing to us at some point. If I use the word work all the time, some of us may not feel like we can identify with it. But if we turn the word work into service, then suddenly we realize, wait a minute, that is something we are all doing, isn't it? Then sometimes we ask ourselves, why is it that when we even perform what appears to be devotional service, we still are very disturbed. We still have problems with devotees. We still have differences. And yet we are performing work that's meant for the satisfaction of Krishna. Why is it that we seem to be caught in the material modes of nature even while performing what we think is service? We may think that we are offering the results of our work at the workplace because we are devotees. But then when something happens, we also become disturbed. So this is a very practical point that Krishna is bringing up actually. Intrinsic to this verse is to understand that this entire universe is actually made up of the modes of material nature. No one can escape it. It's very clear in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is actually all on the material modes of nature. In the 5th verse, Krishna makes it very clear. Sattvam rajas tamas iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha. In other words, in this material world, the material modes of nature are produced. They are part of a material creation. Krishna goes on to say, Nibadanti Mahabaho. He calls Krishna, Krishna, you're very powerful in your mighty arm. But remember one thing, Dehe, Dehina, Avyayam. In other words, this material nature is made up of 3 modes. It is made up of goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the living entity comes into contact with nature, now this is a very important point. The moment we come in contact with material nature, then Krishna says, what happens to us is we become conditioned by the modes. This is the starting point of the difficulty for us. You all have heard of the word conditioning, isn't it? All the time. Conditioning means we become habituated to something. That's what conditioning means. So sometimes we may not think what is conditioning about. Conditioning means you do something every day and you do it almost as a routine. It becomes so much a part of your life that you become conditioned by it. And eventually, it defines who you are. That's why sometimes we cannot break out of a certain way of thinking, because our whole life we have been conditioned to think in a certain way. That's why it's very difficult for some of us to break out of a particular behavior, because we are so conditioned to behave in a certain way. And when we realize that, hey, that behavior is not devotee behavior, even then it's difficult, because we are compelled by the conditioning. We must also understand life after life after life, we have been more non-devotees than devotees. Somehow by Krishna's mercy, in this life we have become devotees. Maybe in last life we were struggling. Maybe the last life we were struggling a bit more. But obviously we are still here because we are conditioned. We are conditioned. So that's why 14.5 tells us that the living entity, the moment he is born, the living entity has to assume what we call the shariri, isn't it? The body. And this body is the foundation for the contact. Very important. The body is where we get contact with the material condition. Why? Because the body will include the mind, the false ego, as well as the intelligence. So even though we may look like we are appearing to look like devotees, but our mind may be conditioned. It may be struggling to be devotees. Our intelligence may be telling our mind, please be devotees. But we are still struggling to be devotees. And of course, our false ego tells us, why must you become devotee? False ego will tell you, no, you're not devotee. You are this body. So why waste time trying to become a devotee? Why be a servant of the Lord when you are the master of your own body? So in this kind of thinking, it's very difficult, Prabhus and Matajis, to come out of the material world. It's very, very difficult. One tilak does not do it. Dhoti kurta does not do it. It is behavior that finally does it. And how does that behavior come? Through transcendental knowledge. In the purport, Prabhupada makes it very clear that the living entity, even though it is actually transcendental, by nature we are all transcendental. And actually Prabhupada writes in the purport of 14.5, we have nothing to do with material nature. It's a very important point. We have actually nothing to do with material nature. But Prabhupada says, because we are conditioned, we are under the spell of this material ignorance. So what happens is, different kinds of bodies, in accordance to our different aspects of life, what happens is we become conditioned to different modes of nature. That's why all of us may have a variety of happiness and distress. But ultimately, this happiness and distress is nothing but the interaction of the modes of material nature. You may be very happy because you're in the mode of goodness. Generally, when you're in the sattvic mode, the conditioning of a person in sattvic mode is that they tend to be happy. You find brahmanas, if you're really brahmanical by habit, not just wearing the thread and not behaving like brahmana, if you're really brahmanical by habit, you find very naturally, right, you're very sattvic, which means in any condition of life, you're very peaceful. This is nature of a person in mode of goodness. A person in mode of passion, you can see him or her anywhere. Very often, small things agitate us. Little things disturb our mind. Simple things we complicate. That is a very, very defining characteristic of a person in the mode of passion. Very often, we are passionate about something, we are agitated by it also, and we complicate something which is very simple. So supposing we are told by Krishna, or we are told deity worship is like this, A, B, C, D, E. The passionate person will say, why can't it be A, then bracket 1, bracket 2, and bracket 3? And why not delete B and insert a new B? This is how an agitated person would think. The ignorant person is very sadhu, but he's sadhu in the wrong way. He's ignorant, that means he doesn't care. I don't care, let me just sleep for the whole day. If there's Mangalarti, what is Mangalarti? If there's service to be done, what should service be done? So this darkness of ignorance means we are not bothered, we are not interested in Krishna consciousness. So just by this description from Bhagavatam, actually you will come to know where we are, isn't it? We can all inspect ourselves. Please don't inspect the person next to you, but inspect yourself. Because our tendency, I'm already looking, you're all giving sidelong glances to persons next to you. We should look at ourselves. We are the ones we have to see actually. So Bhagavatam tells us in in the 6th canto, 4th chapter, Daksha says something very nice. Of all persons, it's Daksha. Daksha is also a very great personality. In the 6th canto, 4th chapter, he has a beautiful prayer. Yadya niruktam vachasa nirupitam diyakshavirva manasodayasya ma bhut swarupam gunarupam hitata savai gunapaya visharga lakshana. In that verse, he tells us one very important point. He's saying to the Lord, and he lists 4 things that actually has nothing to do with Krishna. And if we can get out of these 4 things, we become fixed automatically, as the verse tells us, in transcendence. So what are the 4 things he tells us? The first thing he says is, Krishna, anything expressed by material vibrations. So first thing is, anything that we express by material vibrations. In other words, if we speak prajalpa with each other, if we criticize each other, if we only discuss mundane topics, actually it has nothing to do with Krishna. That's his first point. So if we want to be transcendental and out of the modes, we should first learn to control this tongue. And we should learn to talk topics which are related to Krishna and not related to Maya. Very important. Sometimes people take this for granted. But what you speak is who you become. Isn't it very true? Because it defines your consciousness. Very often, if a man is silent, you don't know what he's thinking. But the moment they open their mouth, you know whether there is something there or there's nothing there. Because what we speak is a reflection of what we think. So that's the first thing. Second point, if anything which is ascertained by material intelligence, it has nothing to do with Krishna. In other words, if we use our material intelligence to psychoanalyze everything, without Bhagavatam, without scriptures, without Guru, Sadhu and Sastra, then that only becomes speculation. We think that our intelligence is very powerful, but actually it is only material. So that's the second thing that's very important. Nothing to do with Krishna. The third thing, nothing to do with Krishna, is anything which is experienced by material senses. Very important. Whenever we experience something with the material senses, we may think it is very wonderful. But until the material senses are used in the service of Krishna, they remain material. You see the difference? The eyes are the eyes. But if the eyes see Krishna, then we are using the material senses for spiritual things. If the mouth, if the tongue is used to speak about Krishna, then the entire material sense becomes spiritualized. But if we speak not about Krishna, if we do something not related to Krishna, if we experience something which has nothing to do with Krishna, then it has nothing to do with Krishna. Very important point. The fourth thing is anything which is concocted within the mind. The word Daksha uses is concocted. Concoction means there is no basis for what we are thinking. It is all speculation. I don't like that person because he's not smiling at me. He mustn't be a good person. Sometimes we look at people and we form impressions of them. We look at how their dhoti looks. We look at how their tilak is. We look at whether they have hair, no hair. Sometimes, Matajis, you may look at the saris. You may look at no jewelry, got jewelry, too much jewelry, too little jewelry. You may look at so many things between us. And we decide and we judge people based on how they look. We judge and concoct based on what someone says. We may look at a person and form an impression, but it has no spiritual basis. Because it doesn't help us in Krishna consciousness. The whole of Bhagavatam speaks about devotees and personalities who are completely out of the realm of material qualification. And yet, when we are in the material modes of nature, we become so caught up with who we are, what degree we have, where we stay, what we drive, or how we look. These things become disqualification. So, this 6.429 explains to us that if we come out of these 4, we actually are coming out of the modes of material nature. It's a very important point for us to remember. Then another thing that's important here, based on 14.5 of Bhagavad Gita that we just spoke about, we can understand how powerful the modes are. Even when we want to come out of the modes of nature, we find that our material conditioning keeps coming back. It's very difficult. In fact, Bhagavatam tells us, even when a devotee comes to devotional service, if we are not careful, we will also bring the modes of material nature into our devotional service. In other words, we carry our material baggage into Gauranga Center. And when we perform devotional service, we mix our devotional service with material motives. With material motives. That is where we become frustrated as devotees. You will find this given elaborately explained by Kapila Dev in the 3rd canto, 29th chapter. It starts from the 8th, 9, 10, 11 and 12 verse. If you read them, you will understand that even when we perform bhakti, if we are not pure in our motive, our bhakti will also be touched by the material modes of nature. Why? Because instead of transforming ourselves with transcendental knowledge, we try to fit bhakti into our material life. That is the problem. Somehow or another, you try to fit bhakti into your material life. Instead of material life becoming subordinate to bhakti, you try to fit bhakti into material life. That is why Kapila Dev tells his mother, "My dear mother, I've got news for you. Someone can perform devotional service, but their devotional service could be executed in different modes of nature. For example," he says, "a person in the mode of the darkness of ignorance, how does he behave? Such a person is very often executing devotional service in such a way that he is proud, violent, angry, and envious." So sometimes we may take up devotional service, but our pride starts building up. I'm very senior devotee. I know how to pronounce shlokas. Somebody else doesn't know how to pronounce shlokas. Therefore, I am better than that person. I am doing so many services. I'm everywhere. I'm doing everything. This is pride. Or if someone else is doing something very nicely and we can't do it, even though we are performing devotional service, we become very envious. We don't like the person because, oh, he sings very nicely. Oh, the person does some service very nicely. And we try to criticize the person. Envy, pride, anger, and sometimes we are even violent. Of course, hopefully devotees don't beat each other up. Sometimes it happens. But apart from that, our violence is in our tongue. Our tongue is actually the violent creature here. Sometimes have you met people who can say words so sharp, you feel like someone took a knife and cut you into little pieces, isn't it? It is an art, by the way, but some people excel at it, and that is not devotional service. So we should be very careful. There's a world of a difference between a spiritual master chastising someone and a senior or a devotee thinking they're very senior and going around chastising people. The adhikar of a devotee is humility. Mahaprabhu put a straw between his teeth and begged people to chant holy names. Who are we to think that we have the adhikar to actually chastise anyone about devotional service? So all these are in the modes of passion. And Prabhupada quotes, he writes in the purport very nicely, such a devotee thinks he is the best devotee. Prabhupada actually writes that. So if we ever at some point, even a thought flows through the mind, actually I'm a better devotee than someone, that's as bad as best. It's as bad as best. So Prabhupada says such a person is not a good character. And Prabhupada writes in the last line, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that when you meet devotees of this character, just say Hare Krishna to them, but keep a regular distance. Keep a regular distance. It's safer. Because the conditioning of the material modes is very strong. A devotee in the mode of passion, Kapila Dev says, he will worship the deity, but he forgets that the deity is in the heart of all the devotees. He will do wonderful arati, come down and scold somebody. He will do first class arati, come down, criticize someone. He will do wonderful arati and take care of everything there, but his behavior to all the living entities is highly suspect. This is classic devotee in the mode of passion. In other words, he is considered by Bhagavatam to be Bilnadrak. You know what Bilnadrak means in Sanskrit? Separatist. Bhagavatam says such a person is a separatist. You've heard of separatists, isn't it? Separatists are cousins of terrorists, by the way. And terrorist cousin is separatist. When you start not becoming aligned with anything, you terrorize people. And sometimes we get devotees who become terrorists because they terrorize devotees in the Sangha. You know, the moment a devotee walks in, all the devotees leave because there is a terrorist devotee. We don't want terrorist devotees. We want devotees who come and they become like magnets. People all come to that devotee and say, I want to be with that devotee because when I'm with that devotee, I remember Krishna. That's what each one of us should become. Otherwise, we cause so much disturbance in the mode of passion. That's not what we want. The third kind of devotee in the mode of ignorance, that is where the devotee, so that was passion. No, the first one was ignorance, second is passion. The third, Kapila Dev says, who is a devotee who worships in the mode of goodness? A devotee who works in the mode of goodness, he performs all his activities, but he never keeps the results. He actually offers the results to Krishna. Such a devotee becomes sattvic. And from the sattvic platform, Shastras tell us, we then launch ourselves into Vishuddha Sattva. We cross over to become devotees of the Lord. So, we really have to inspect ourselves based on Bhagavatam. What kind of devotional service are we actually doing? And Prabhupada gives us a very frightening end to the purport. I'm sorry, but I have to tell you what is frightening also. Prabhupada says these are only 3 examples of devotional service mixed, right? But Prabhupada says, Shastras tell us, how many processes of devotional service do we have? We have 9. For each of them, there are 3 modes. 9 times 3 is 27. And if you times 27 by 3, there are 81 categories of devotional service in the different modes of material nature. 81 categories. And Prabhupada says, a devotee can chant in the mode of ignorance, chant in the mode of passion, chant in the mode of goodness. But in all 3, the devotee is not chanting in the mode of pure devotional service. And then we blame Krishna because we are very disturbed. Or we blame the person next to us, because of you, Prabhu, I cannot chant. Because you're not smiling at me, I cannot eat Bhagavatam. Because you didn't feed me enough prasadam, that's why I'm not coming to the center. It's us. It's really us. Very important. So this is the point that is being stated here. And that's why when we talk of material modes of nature, it's also very important to understand material modes of nature don't just refer to material modes outside. And I've taken up bhakti, I'm free. No. If you have not taken it up with the right mood, then it's very difficult to become a devotee. But at the same time, Prabhupada says devotional service is very sublime and it is very easy. Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Instruction, in the preface and later the introduction, he writes that the success of a devotee in Krishna consciousness depends on his attitude. Attitude. So if our attitude in devotional service is to really follow the fundamental principles of devotional service, then Bhagavatam tells us that we actually come out of this platform of material modes of nature. That is why it is very nicely stated in 14, I think it is the second last verse of chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita. The way is given by Krishna. Mam chayo avyabhicharena. Right? Avyabhicharena means devotional service which is considered to be unfailing in all circumstances. It is considered to be chaste. When a woman is chaste, she is considered very powerful. Chastity is a very, very powerful factor in a woman. It means whatever happens, she is just loyal to one person. And in devotional service, when we say that we have to be chaste, then only Prabhupada writes and Krishna says, if you really want to come out of the material modes of nature, then you must perform devotional service which is avyabhicharena. If that happens, bhakti yogena sevate sa gunan samatittetan brahma bhuviyaya kalpate. Therefore, Krishna makes it very clear. If someone engages in full devotional service, which is unfailing in all circumstances, that person will transcend the modes of material nature. They will come to the level of Brahma Bhuta. Very important. And when you come to the level of Brahma Bhuta, then you can start devotional service. Before that, it is not really devotional service. It is some masala, some khichdi. It is moving towards that. But let us be clear that it is still not devotional service. So it is a very sobering thing for us to understand where we stand. It is also very important for us to understand that do not take lightly these material modes of nature. They are very powerful. But more powerful than the modes is devotional service which is done without any motive. It is ahaituki apratikata. In other words, when we perform devotional service, We do it for the satisfaction of Yajna. We do it for the Lord's satisfaction. We don't do it for the results that come from the devotional service. We don't do it because we want name, fame. We don't do it because someone's going to pat us on the back and say, Prabhu, good service. If I don't get a pat on my back, I'm not doing devotional service. No. We do devotional service for the satisfaction of Krishna. Why do we come to the center? We come to the center to satisfy Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters. And to satisfy and serve every other devotee. Last person is ourselves. In fact, you can even take us out of the equation. And when you come to the center with that mood, I guarantee you on the pages of Bhagavatam, you will never leave the center agitated. You will never discuss Prajalpa. You will never concoct. You will not misuse your mental intelligence. Because every discussion is about what we can do for Krishna. You will not ask silly, mundane questions which you only ask if you are in Srinagar Road. I know we are in Srinagar Road, but we are outside of Srinagar Road also. We are transcendental. We will not do that. This is very important. Matajis and Prabhus, when we come for cooking seva and we are chopping vegetables, right? That is the time which is most dangerous. Because that's the time either one of you can start something which has no connection to Krishna and you all engage in mundane talk, or you could quickly put on a lecture of Prabhupada and whoever wants to talk, just turn on the volume and eventually they have to stop. We could either hear Kirtan, we could discuss or read shlokas, or we could just do Prajalpa. If you do Prajalpa, believe me, you're not benefiting the vegetables. You're not benefiting your consciousness. And you're doing a great disservice when you actually offer this bhoga to Krishna. Because we did not put our heart and our devotional service into it. You see the point? Then what happens is, we may be in Gauranga Center, but the material modes have already got us. We are not free of the modes, and we become disturbed. This is very important. So please remember that when we want to come out of this, Bhagavatam gives the way. The royal way to come out of the material modes of nature is given in the 3rd canto, 5th chapter, 42nd verse. Please remember this verse whenever we are agitated. The verse is very nice. Yad Shraddhaya Shrudavatya Cha Bhaktya Samrijyamane Hridaye Avadhaya Jnanena Vairagya Balena Dhira Vraje Matate Angri Saroja Pitham. So in the verse, it's the Devatas who are chanting. The Devatas chant many verses in the 5th chapter, and all the verses are dedicated to the lotus feet of the Lord. And in this particular verse, they give us the clue. This is what they say. They say, simply by hearing, the word that is used here is Shrutavatya. Shrutavatya means to simply hear. What is the meaning of simply to hear? It has 2 meanings. Simply to hear means we don't need anything else. We just need to do hearing. Sometimes we complicate our devotional service by saying, no, we have to do that, we have to do this, we have to get everything prepared and then we can hear. It is better to hear first and forget everything else. Because you may not have time to hear. So that's very important. Many devotees tell me it's very difficult to wake up in the morning to chant Krishna's names because I wake up at 3. I have to take bath. My bathing time generally is about 15 minutes to half an hour. I finish taking bath, I come out, I'm very sleepy. I tell myself I'll just lie down 5 minutes. And then when I wake up, it's 5:30. Now supposing you really are so conditioned that you have to take a bath, and your bathing time you don't chant, you just take a bath and go back to sleep. Isn't it just better if you simply got up and chanted Krishna's names? Wash your hands, wash your feet, avoid the bath because you go into it and spend half an hour and just start chanting Krishna's names. Krishna's names is like soap. Does anyone give the soap a bath before you take a bath? Does anybody bathe your soap first? No, right? Nobody bathes the soap first. Because the soap is self-purificatory. The chanting of the holy name is by itself purificatory. When you are in a situation like Singapore where you don't have the luxury of time, but you want to make sure your ritual is so perfect, and then you miss out the main point. The main dish is not there, all the side dishes are there. Then we are really caught up again in the material modes of nature. So when Prabhupada says Shrutavatya, that means make your life simple so that you can hear. Simply hearing means simplify your existence so that you can hear. My Guru Maharaj used to tell me the mind is such rascal devki that when you wake up you will turn off the alarm clock. Then you will put 2 alarm clocks, it will still turn it on. I know people who have hung alarm clocks on their neck and they still can't wake up. It goes on and they are sleeping and it's hanging. Everybody else has woken up but they can't wake up. I've heard people put 5 different alarms next to them and they still can't wake up. So it's just better, and after they wake up they need their half an hour bath. And then they feel sleepy and go back to sleep again. So I remember my Guru Maharaj telling me very simple. The moment you wake up, chanting bead should be on the table next to you. Immediately before the mind can say go back to sleep, just hold the chanting bead and say Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta. Because Prabhupada writes in the purports of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, the chanting of the holy names has 10 offenses to avoid. But the chanting of the Panchatattva mantra has no offenses to avoid. It's the genius of Prabhupada. You can chant the Panchatattva mantra first before you start chanting. That's what we do. Why do we do that? So that we are the proper platform of consciousness. I hope you all chant the Panchatattva mantras before you chant, because that is recommended. When you chant that in the morning and you wake up and start with that, immediately Panchatattva gives you the mercy and you can start chanting Krishna's names. It doesn't matter. After 4 or 5 rounds, when you're really into the chanting and if you need to get ready because you're going to serve the deities, then please serve the deities. But start it. That's the whole point. We have to get the caravan to move, as we say. It has to move. That's the important thing. So Shrutavatya means very simple. Simply by hearing. Be simple. Don't complicate your devotional service. Because as it is, we have a complicated life. So complicating your devotional service just brings the complication of material life into spiritual life. That's it. And the other point that's very nice is, how should we perform devotional service? The Devatas say. They say we should perform it with Shraddhaya. Shraddha means what? Faith. But Shraddhaya means with eagerness. If you read the word-to-word meaning, it is with eagerness. So when we perform devotional service, chanting, reading, cooking, being with devotees, serving them, what is the ingredient? The ingredient is eagerness. When we are really eager to serve devotees, we will never criticize them. When we judge devotees, we can never be eager. Have you noticed that? You will never be enthusiastic to serve devotees if you judge them, if you find fault with them. But if you are simple in heart and you are eager to serve devotees and Krishna, nothing touches you. You're free from the modes automatically. So Bhagavatam tells us, simply by hearing about your lotus feet, with eagerness and devotion, by meditating about the lotus feet within the heart, that is important. All that we do, Bhagavatam tells us, must come from the heart. Otherwise, it is a formality. It must always come from the heart. And for those who do it from the heart, the Devatas tell us, one becomes enlightened with knowledge. Transcendental knowledge. This is the key. This is how we get transcendental knowledge. Simply by hearing about your lotus feet, with eagerness and devotion in the heart. See, the verse is very simple. Then what happens? By meditating upon the feet within our hearts, then one at once becomes enlightened with knowledge. And now this is very important. On the strength of that knowledge, one gets detachment. This is how we become naturally detached from the world, not artificially detached. We become naturally detached by becoming attached. You will notice if you become detached from something, and you don't become attached to something else, you'll be in what we call limbo land. You know limbo land? Limbo means you'll be stuck in somewhere in between. And it's only a matter of time before you gravitate to another bad habit. You give up one bad habit and say, then we ask you, okay, you gave it up, what have you replaced it with? I say, no, I'm just sitting down and meditating on silence. Silence means, you are in limbo. What will happen is, you'll move on from one thing and you'll go to another. It's just a question of time, right? People cure addiction to smoking by maybe taking a lot of sweets. Fine, then you get diabetes. There's no difference. Either you die because of cancer or you die because of diabetes. But you're going to die that way anyway. Instead of doing that, from becoming attached to material things, we become attached to spiritual things. And that's why detachment comes automatically to a devotee who is attached to hearing about Jagannath's glories with eagerness and who meditates on the lotus feet of the Lord in his heart. This is how we come out of the material modes of nature. And Bhagavatam then tells us such a person becomes pacified. The word pacified in this verse is given by the word dhira. And yet dhira very often means sober. But Prabhupada translates dhiraha here as being pacified. You know the Pacific Ocean? The word Pacific from the Pacific Ocean comes from the Latin word, which is actually the root word of the word pacify. Pacificus. Pacificus in Latin actually means pacified. So when the explorers saw Pacific Ocean, they named it Pacific because even though it's the largest ocean, it's also one of the more gentler oceans. And Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita talks about the waters of all the great seas coming into the ocean and yet the ocean being calm, isn't it? It's the same idea here. The lotus feet of the Lord is so worth taking shelter. But to take shelter of it, we must develop qualities. These qualities come on the strength of devotional service. What are the qualities? Eagerness to hear, meditating from the heart, becoming simple in devotional service. These three. In the prayer, three typical behaviors of devotees come out. And when they do all this, what is the effect? They become pacified. So sometimes if your heart is troubled in material nature, how to pacify the heart? 3.5.42 tells us. How to pacify it? Very simple. You just pacify it on the strength of devotional service. And how do we do that? Become dhira. Become dhira. And what is the meaning of dhira? To become detached from this material world. Not artificially, but by always going back to Krishna. This is very important point. So the best way to understand this, actually, to conclude our time with you, is actually to understand this verse from the context of a great character from Srimad Bhagavatam. You'll find every Bhagavatam personality can fit one verse in Bhagavad Gita. You go home and try it. Every single verse in Bhagavad Gita and purport, you will find a corresponding personality in Bhagavatam. There will be a pastime of the Lord in Bhagavatam or the pastime of devotee that can explain Bhagavad Gita. Every single verse. I have not found a verse in Bhagavad Gita that you cannot find one pastime of Krishna or the devotees in Bhagavatam or Mahaprabhu from Chaitanya Deepa. It's always there. That's why these scriptures are considered to be not subjective, but they are considered to be absolute. Absolute. And the best person we can think of on the principle of work and activity is Vritrasura from the 6th canto. And we have all heard of Vritrasura. You know that he is a powerful demon who was called by his father sage Twashta because his brother Vishwarupa was slain by Indra. Because Indra got very fed up with Vishwarupa because he was supposed to be the preceptor of the Devatas. But he forgot to check the family history of Vishwarupa. The family history was, his mother's side was related to the Asuras. So whenever he prayed for the Devatas to become strong to defeat the Asuras, he thought, what about my uncles, They are also my uncles, right? So very quietly, unknown to Indra, he would chant some mantras so that when the Devatas and the Asuras fought, it was always 1 all, 2 all, 3 all, 4 all, or 0, 0. It was never one person winning the other way. And I'm sure even if it was penalties, it was also a draw. In this way, he always maintained balance between the Devas and the Asuras. But when Indra found out this is what happened, he became very upset. And Indra, in being upset, he did not think. He took out his sword and he chopped off the head of Vishwarupa. And the head of Vishwarupa fell at the feet of at the lap of Sage Twashta. Sage Twashta came to find out that his son, who was very simple and Brahminical, he was killed by, of all people, the Lord of Swargaloka. So he decided, let me now with my yogic power bring up a great being so powerful that he will slay Indra. And therefore Vritrasur was born. Okay? And now when Vritrasur was born, Bhagavatam tells us when he came out to fight Indra, Indra and all the Devatas saw that he was too powerful. So they went back to Brahma, and Brahma went back to Lord Vishnu. And the Lord, Supreme Lord, told them that on your own you cannot defeat Vritrasur because he's very powerful. And by the way, he was also a devotee in his previous life. Who was Vritrasur in his previous life? Chitraketu Maharaj, right? But now he assumed the form of an Asura. So as an Asura, his job scope was very simple. As an Asura, you don't have devotional service in your heart. You're supposed to be devoid of devotional service. But because Vritrasur was actually a devotee in his previous life, Krishna never forgets a devotee's devotion. And he brought it into the heart of Vritrasur to show us a very important point in this pastime. So when Indra then speaks and prays to Krishna, Krishna tells them, go to the sage Dadichi, and he will give up his bones. Make from the bone the most powerful weapon known in all the three worlds. It is the Thunderbolt. And with that you will definitely defeat Vritrasur. Victory is assured. So they go to Dadichi, and imagine someone comes to you and says, oh, by the way, Krishna told me that your bones are very good. So if you don't mind, in the spirit of service, can you just give me your bones? Nobody will give bones. You tell them to give you plate of prasadam, even they won't give you. Bones they will never give you. So Dadichi was asked, please give your bones. If he gives his bones, it means he gives up his life. But Dadichi said, if my life is useful in the service of the devotees, then I'll give it. And he meditated on the Lord, and he merged into transcendence. Because he was free from the material modes of nature. Because he realized that this body was meant for Krishna. And if Krishna wants it, then he can take it. This is the mood of one who comes out of the material modes of nature. Not that, how can Krishna do this to me? But instead, how nice that Krishna has given me a chance to do devotional service. So the Devatas took it, brought it to Vishwakarma, fixed all the bones together, and it became the powerful thunderbolt. Now Indra comes with all the Devatas to the battlefield. And at that point of time, Vritrasur seized Indra. And Bhagavatam says, when he saw him, Vritrasur became very, very powerful and upset. He called Indra by very powerful names, very harsh. Killer of Brahmana, sinful Indra, I will now slay you. But why was he doing all this? Because he was a warrior on the side of the Asuras. So his job scope now was to make sure that he had to fight Indra. He was performing his duty. But at the same time, when he did that, Bhagavatam said, Vritrasur picked up his trident. You know the trident, right? Very powerful trident. And he hurled it at Indra. Bhagavatam said, the trident started whirling across the battlefield with such velocity that halfway through it turned into a blazing fire. Can you imagine that? And by the time it was coming towards Indra, it seemed like the blazing fire of the millennium, end of this world kind of fire. That's how powerful the trident was. And as he threw it, Indra said, O enemy and sinful slayer of Brahmana, today I will kill you. And as it flew in the sky, Indra was not perturbed, because Indra had just got the association of Krishna, and therefore he was very powerful and he was confident. It was very simple for him. As the trident came, Bhagavatam says, he just cut it to small pieces, and he handled it like you would handle garlands of flowers. Nothing. And at the same time, he hurled his thunderbolt at Vritrasur, and Vritrasur's arm was severed. His entire arm, one of his arms was severed from his body. And Bhagavatam tells us, when it came out, it fell. It was so large, the arm, it was almost the size of the serpent Vasuki. That big it was. And when the arm fell off, anyone with an arm falling off would say, that's it, I'm done with fighting. But Vritrasur did not become morose. Bhagavatam tells us, even though his arm came down, Vritrasur stood up. He approached King Indra and he struck him with a mace. And the mace was so powerful, Indra fell off Airavata. And not only did Indra fall off Airavata, even the elephant also fell back. And when he fell down, the thunderbolt left his arm. It left his hand. Like I said before, we have to do this as a drama one day for one of our programs. Don't you see all the elements of an amazing drama? It will be amazing, you know. I'm just wondering who will be with us soon, but never mind. I have a few ideas actually. So what happened then? Indra was left here, and the thunderbolt was further away, Bhagavatam said. And Bhagavatam tells us that when that happened, the Charunas, the Vidyadharas and everybody, they all started saying in the sky, alas, alas, because it looked like he was going to lose. At that point of time, when Indra dropped the thunderbolt, Bhagavatam said he became discouraged. He became morose. The word Bhagavatam tells us, Indra was practically defeated. In his mind, he became very ashamed. But Vritasura was amazing. Not only was he fighting as an Asura, but he remembered the rules of engagement as Kshatriya. He did not hurt Indra. He stopped at that moment, and Bhagavatam says he encouraged Indra. Who encourages enemies in this material world? Who encourages people that they are not supposed to like? And yet Vritasura, a true gentleman, a true devotee, he still told Indra, take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. Who's your enemy? Himself. He's telling him, take it up, kill your enemy. And then he tells him something harsh. This is not the time to lament your fate. And what is he telling Indra? Stop pitying yourself. That's what he was telling him. Our biggest challenge as devotees is, very often we get caught up in this idea of self-pity. They don't like me, they don't take care of me, I came to the center, no one spoke to me, Mataji spoke to the person next to me, ignored me completely. So I feel very bad, something's wrong with me, I'm the lowest of the lowest. It's not humility, it is self-pity. It is self-pity. And that is exactly what Vritasura recognized in Indra. See Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is so powerful. Anything human that we have here, it has already recognized in Bhagavatam. He told him, don't lament your fate. Don't feel pity. Why? I'm the one who lost my arm, man. Not you. You have the thunderbolt. It's just there. You have to stretch and get it. I don't have an arm. See what he said. And now, he tells him 4 verses that we should remember. Anytime we perform our work, whether in school, office, anytime we come to the center, remember this. It is found in the 6th canto, 12th chapter, 7th verse. And he says, Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious. This is first thing he says. How nice. Now we are all going back to work on Monday. This is Vritasura's first message to us. No one is guaranteed of being victorious. Only person guaranteed of being victorious is that supreme enjoyer, Krishna. Why? He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He knows everything. We are dependent on him. And Indra, we are obliged to accept our material bodies because we have been belligerent. Belligerent means we have never heard Krishna. So sometimes we are victorious and sometimes we are defeated. And Prabhupada in his super excellent purport says that victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he says so nicely that all living entities are fighting under the arrangement of Krishna. Fighting means we are also working under his arrangement. Then he says, one should therefore remember 2 things. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. Please repeat. Pride in victory.
Pride in victory.
Moroseness in defeat.
Moroseness is defeat.
Useless. So Prabhupada is saying again, don't pity yourself if you're morose. Don't be proud if you're doing well. See, Prabhupada says they are both useless. Why? One should fully depend on Krishna because only he can give victory and only he will give defeat. This is very important. And Prabhupada says the living entity is ordered to act according to his karma. Many people in this world say karma is the root of everything. But they forget, as Prabhupada writes here, we are all dictated by our karmas. But guess who's in charge of karma? Finally, it's Krishna. Krishna is the judge of each person's karma, he writes in the purport to this verse. He is the judge of each person's of karma. And then Vritasur, Prabhupada writes, Vritasur encouraged Indra by saying, now Prabhupada is now paraphrasing. Let's hear the Acharya's paraphrase. It's so nice the way he says it. He says, don't be morose because of my victory. Vritasur is saying that. Don't be morose, Indra, because of my victory. There is no need to stop fighting. Instead, you should go on with your duty. When Krishna desires, you will certainly be victorious. That's how Indra was told by Vritasur. Don't worry. If Krishna wants, you will win. But if Krishna wants, you will also lose. But it's all up to Krishna. And then Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, this verse is very instructive for sincere workers in Krishna consciousness. It's for us. This verse is very instructive for sincere workers in Krishna consciousness. Oh, he says the Krishna consciousness movement. So it's the whole movement. What does he say? We should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. Very nice. Either one we should not. Instead, he says we should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we should not be concerned with victory and defeat. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. So actually, if we really want to come out of the modes of material nature, we must understand one thing. All living beings in this world are finally dependent on Krishna. And Vritasur says in the next verse even, everyone like a doll are under the control of the Lord. In fact, there's only one person in all the world who's guaranteed a victory. It's Krishna. It's always Krishna. Krishna always gets his way. We don't. And Vritasur told this to Indra because Indra thought the moment I get the lightning bolt, I will win. He was checking that mentality. Why should I think that just because I got something from Krishna, it means victory is mine? The victory was actually that he got an all darshan of Krishna. The victory was that Krishna benedicted him with his darshan. Not that he was going to win the war. The war didn't matter. The result of the work that we do does not matter. That's in the hands of Jagannath. But are we sincerely performing our duty? So if your job scope is to chop vegetables, then that is our duty. Whether the vegetable comes out all right or not, that's not our duty. Whether the food finally tastes good is up to Jagannath. It's really up to him. But while we are performing that service, are we remembering Krishna? And Prabhupada writes in the purport that actually the Sura here was Vritasur. And the Asura here was Indra. Because Indra forgot that he should be dependent on Krishna. And Vritasur was always remembering that he must be dependent on Krishna. And finally, Vritasur says such a nice point. I want to read to you this point he says, since everything is dependent on the will of the Lord, one should become equipoised in fame and defamation. In fame and defamation. Sometimes people will speak very highly of us. Sometimes the same people who say nice things about us will criticize us. Sometimes there will be victory. Sometimes there will be defeat. And Vritasur says, sometimes you will live. Sometimes you will die. In these effects, there is happiness and distress. But please maintain your equilibrium and don't become anxious. And finally, he tells him this, my enemy, Indra, just look at me. He tells him, now look at me. I have already been defeated. One arm gone. My weapon and my arm has been cut to pieces. You have already overwhelmed me. But nonetheless, with a desire to kill you because this is my job scope, I am trying my best to fight. He says that. I am not at all morose, even under such adverse conditions. This is mood of devotee. He is not morose, even though everything is against him. And now he tells Indra, therefore Indra, Give up your moroseness. Pick up the weapon and let's start fighting. And he then tells his dear enemy, my dear Indra, consider our fight a gambling match. Our lives are the stakes. The arrows we are shooting are the dice. And the animals that we are standing on, like your elephant, is the game board. No one will know when we will be defeated, and no one knows when we will be victorious. It all depends on providence. It depends on providence. Now, how does Indra react to that wonderful association of Vritrasura? He says something very nice, Indra. Indra heard the straightforward and instructive words of Vritrasura. Do you see? The word Prabhupada translates is, Vritrasura was straightforward. This is mood of devotee. A devotee is straightforward. And then he says, the moment Indra heard that, Indra praised him. He picked up the thunderbolt without bewilderment or duplicity. Duplicity means without anything in the heart, he actually praised Vritrasura. Why? Because he got sadhu sangha from Vritrasura. How do we come out of the material modes of nature finally? It is sadhu sangha. We can perform sincere devotional service, but without the blessings of our spiritual master and the blessings of an association of devotees, very hard to come out of the modes of material nature. Indra was in the modes when his thunderbolt fell. That's why he became morose. But Vritrasura stopped and told him, pick it up. Then he preached to him. He shared with him transcendental knowledge. And after 4 or 5 verses, he changed his heart because of Sangha. And when he changed his heart, now Indra says something very nice. He says, oh great demon. He still calls him demon, by the way. Right? Because why? Job scope is, you are the Asura, I am the Sura. Oh great demon, I see by your discrimination and endurance in the devotional service, this is what is needed. We need to discriminate what is favorable in devotional service and what is not favorable. This is how we come out of the modes. If something looks very nice, a service looks very, very enticing, very glamorous, but when you take it up, you will forget Krishna, drop it. Drop it. But if a service looks very unglamorous, nobody knows you're doing it, take it up. Because at least you remember Krishna. My Guru Maharaj used to tell me the most unglamorous service in devotional service is studying Bhagavatam within the 4 corners of the walls of your house. Most unglamorous service, because nobody sees you. The most glamorous service is actually when everyone can see you. And yet, that is the test of whether you are attached to Bhagavatam. That is the real test. So he says discrimination. And the second word he uses is endurance. What is the meaning of endurance? Endurance means perseverance, persistence. We must never give up. Vritrasura lost an arm. He lost his weapon. Did he give up his fight? Did he give up his duty? No. He did it. Even though he was not going to win, he said, it doesn't matter. I'll fight even if I lose. Because it's my duty. So the same thing we must do in our service. It doesn't matter the outcome of the service. What is more important, Prabhupada writes in the purport, is when you do it with your heart, you become recognized by Krishna. Krishna will recognize you, not for your victory or your defeat, but by your sincerity. And so he ends by saying, despite you being in your dangerous position, you are a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And after he said that, you have surmounted the illusory energy of Vishnu. And because of that, you have given up the demonic mentality. And then what happens? Bhagavatam tells us, Vritrasura and King Indra spoke about devotional service on the battlefield. But after speaking, as a matter of duty, they again began fighting. So they started fighting. Why? Because it was their duty. They spoke Bhagavatam, okay, now I think we have to stop now, we have to fight. So let's fight now. And they fought. But all their fighting was on the basis of what they had heard and what they had discussed. This is the way in how we become unattached to the modes of material nature and how transcendental knowledge through devotional service and sadhu sangha will actually free us. So the next time you perform any work, whether you are a housewife, whether you have a project, whether you're a student, Whether you have an exam, whether you're a father, whether you're a mother, whether you're a husband or your wife, you each have a duty. You must perform it to perfection. Whether you like it or not is immaterial. Whether you think you're going to get a result that you want or not is immaterial. Whether you do it with devotion and as an offering to Krishna is all that counts. And if you practice this, you will see that you become free. You become detached very naturally. And like the Pacific Ocean, which is very deep, very vast, and yet it is very peaceful, you will also become pacified. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. And I go to pray. Are there any questions, comments? Maybe I can take one question. You have a question? Yes.
So, when you say it is...
Oh, you have, okay. You have that rule. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful class. Thank you for the wonderful class, Guru. So, when we say three modes of material nature, we are talking about Rajas, Tamas and Sattva.
Yes.
Now, when you say being attached or being unattached to that, how do you relate that? Because when I say any action is performed in one of the modes,
Yes.
Rajas, Tamas or Sattva.
Yes.
So, when you say being unattached with all the modes, what exactly you mean in terms of doing any activity?
What we mean, practically speaking, is we all have a certain disposition. Some of us are passionate, some of us are more sattvic, some of us are not. In whatever condition that we are currently in, if we try to render devotional service using the qualities that we have in Krishna's service, or changing our qualities so that it becomes aligned with the qualities that Krishna loves, then we come out of the modes of material nature. In other words, if I say my nature is to be, I am always shouting at people. So when I come to Krishna consciousness, I'll continue shouting Prabhu, because I'm passionate and I'm shouting, but sincerely I'm shouting at them. It's not going to work. If you come to Krishna consciousness, one of the rules is you become Priyavakya. Be loving with devotees. So if your nature is that you're always losing temper, you should check the temper by devotional service and be instructed by a devotee, and make sure that you do not perform that, so that you actually serve a devotee by actually controlling your senses. That is how our behavior brings us out of the modes of material nature. How will you do that? You do it on two pillars. The first pillar is your devotional practice. If you're chanting nicely and following the regulated principles and following everything Prabhupada has given, the process works. You will see a change in the way we are in behavior. But if we preach about it and we don't internalize it and take it into our heart, then we look very good on paper. But our behavior, everybody sees he's not a devotee. So actually it is two things. Bhagavatam means there must be Bhagavatam. That means there must be devotional service. And then there must be behavior. The behavior follows the extent of sincerity that we perform the devotional service in. So there must be a sincere attempt, Prabhu. The word that is used in Bhagavatam is Granatascha Swachestika. We must take this matter seriously, and we must endeavor to align ourselves with what Krishna is pleased by, and not what we are pleased by. That's how we come out of the modes. Is that alright?
So fair to say that any activity that you do should be more Krishnized in a way?
That means any activity that we do should actually be dovetailed towards what would please Krishna. So Vritasur knew that Krishna already had taken the side of Indra. So his duty then was, he should play his part to fight. But he was not angry with Krishna, because he accepted what Krishna gave. So those who accept Krishna and don't expect from Krishna, they become very peaceful. And they come out of the material modes of nature. Is that alright? Yeah. Chapter 2. Yes, Madhuri.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, you have mentioned that sometimes we perform an action that we know it's a negative action, but still we perform it due to the habit. So when we do that, but when we are trying not to do that, but when we still keep doing that despite our trying not to do that, sometimes we become very morose, thinking why should things be this way?
Yes.
So what do we do in such a situation? We become remorseful, but also very morose because we're
Very
not
true.
able to.
Very good question actually. There are two ways to approach that question, Mataji. First of all, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna asked the question, what is it that compels us to perform sinful activities even if we don't want to? I use the word sinful activity here because any activity that causes us to forget Krishna is actually sinful. Right? So sinful is not just, the usual idea of sin. Sin means forgetfulness of Krishna. So when we are compelled by the modes of material nature and we do something we don't want to do, the reason we don't feel good about it is very often the thing that we are doing or the behavior we are exhibiting is actually anti-Krishna conscious. That's why we don't want to do it. So if you follow that verse in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked, what is it that compels us to do things even when we don't want to do them? And Krishna answers, it is lust. And lust is born out of contact of the material mode of passion and it transforms into anger. And anger and lust are there because of two reasons. When we perform an action and we don't want, and we find that we keep doing it even though we don't want to do it, the reason why very often it happens is because we are not surrendering to a higher authority. And we are not accepting the instructions of a higher authority who tells us how we should come out of it. Or we are not submitting that I accept you as authority. And the moment I accept you as authority and I know this is wrong, on the strength of you being an authority, I'm ready to give this up even though I find it very difficult. Vritasur accepted Krishna as his authority. So even though by nature he should be demonic, but somehow because he accepted Krishna as the authority, he was prepared to fight the war and lose the battle. Even though nobody in their right mind should do it. Why should I go through this when Krishna has already given a one-sided affair? I shouldn't do it. My nature says that I will not accept this. But he did it. He did it because he knew it would please Krishna. Even if the mind tells us, no, I don't want to do it, the intelligence overrides the mind. Transcendental knowledge overrides intelligence. And we then literally compel ourselves to perform something because we know there is a higher order of living. Like a criminal wants to stop crime. He can do it either by sitting in the jail for the rest of his life or come out and commit the crime anyway. Or he can hear a higher authority. Very often they turn to religion. They accept the teachings of religion, teachings of an authority, teachings of someone whom they consider better, and they submit to it. So the whole devotional process is about how much we can submit to Krishna and the process. If we submit to a spiritual master and we hear the spiritual master, then we won't give reasons, oh Maharaj, I know I want to give it up. You want me to give it up, but I have all these things. We won't use the but. We will say, no, I want to give it up because it is a higher order of love. I will do it for the love of the Lord. Vritasur did it for the love of Krishna. So very often we cannot be compelled to do things in this material world. But by love we can actually come out of difficult things. That's why Krishna's love is very powerful. That's why when we submit, the spiritual master's love is very powerful. When we resubmit ourselves to the love of the spiritual master, the most difficult things that we cannot cross, we can cross it. This is what Shastra says. So I hope that is useful. It's a very good question. Anything else? Yes, Sri Prabhu.
In the verse that you quoted, Yesh Shraddhaya Shuddhatya
3542. Yes.
So the last line is mentioned, you must therefore take the shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet.
Yes.
So you could have made shelter of your lotus feet, but Prabhupada basically uses sanctuary of the lotus feet.
Yes.
So what's the, I would like to hear.
Very nice. If you read 3542 carefully, the Devatas say that we want to take shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet. Why put sanctuary when they are already taking shelter, right? They want to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord because the lotus feet of the Lord is like a sanctuary. Sanctuary, Prabhu, is like a bird sanctuary, for example. East Coast Park, I'm thinking of that. They're supposed to have birds there and no one's supposed to do anything to them. When you have a sanctuary, it's a place of protection. It's a place where you are also considered weak. That's why you take sanctuary, isn't it? When you go to a king in the olden days and you said, give me sanctuary, it literally means give me asylum. Today that word sanctuary politically has become asylum. But it means the same thing. It denotes that we are very weak, we are very subordinate. On our own we cannot do anything. That's why the lotus feet of the Lord is not only a shelter. Shelter is like a place that gives you shade from heat and cold, so it's a shelter. But sanctuary is a place which protects you. Shelter is a place that is there, and you take shelter, but you seek sanctuary, because sanctuary refers to protection. And that's why we want protection of our consciousness. That's why Prabhupada uses the word sanctuary. Sanctuary is a place where you will feel peaceful. Shelter, you can stand under a shelter. The demon can come and stand under a shelter also, because shelter is for everyone. But sanctuary is a place where only the birds are protected here. Only the animals are protected there. And therefore, the devotees are given first-class treatment at the lotus feet of the Lord. Is that okay, bro? Very nice point. Thank you. This is how we must study Prabhupada's books and Bhagavatam. Every single word is a gem. It's a gem. Thank you. The time is 6:50. I don't think we'll have time to do chanting, but maybe I can make some important announcements now.